Hey there, Lauren Sisler here. Welcome into our Week 1 SEC Insider brought to you by All South Appliance Group. On Mondays throughout the season, we'll be recapping Alabama, listen to me, Auburn's game and getting you ready for the week ahead. See, that's what happens, jogging my memory here. It's football season, the first weekend of college football in the SEC, and joining me now to recap fall camp and preview Auburn's 2020 football season and football team is AL.com's Tom Green. Tom, happy Monday to you and happy football season. How you feeling about things right now?
Good. We finally made it. Felt like for a while that it wasn't going to happen, but yeah, I mean, we're here. It's been weird the last few weeks seeing some games on TV, but like not being in a stadium to cover one and like not having Auburn play yet. But I'm excited to finally get to cover some action this weekend.
Yeah, it's definitely been a different deal. Obviously, big news coming down from the Big Ten that they will reinstate their season later in October. But right now, the light is shining bright on the SEC, and the Auburn Tigers getting ready for kickoff against a number 23 Kentucky team in Jordan-Hare Stadium this weekend. I know it's exciting. I just want to start first and kind of hit the rewind button. Just take us through a quick timeline of what this chaotic offseason looked like during the pandemic. It's certainly a lot different than what anyone could have ever envisioned. We've been talking about this for quite some time. Are we going to have a season? Are we not? A lot of moving parts here. So take us through the timeline when the country shut down in March and sort of what these players and these teams have been through now as we get ready for week 1.
Yeah, it's certainly been a very unorthodox and unusual offseason. I mean, you look at mid-March is when things kind of shut down. Players went home for spring break and then didn't return to campus because that's when Auburn kind of decided to, go remote with everything. So spring practice was canceled altogether. They hadn't even begun yet. I know some schools like LSU had already gotten a few practices in, but Auburn wasn't set to start until, mid to late March area there. So they never got their spring practices. They started doing some remote installation and instruction in April and May. Players finally returned to campus the first week of June. They started undergoing testing for COVID-19 weekly. They had 3 players test positive initially off the bat. But for the most part, Auburn did a pretty good job for most of the summer of really containing the virus. They had one stretch there in late July where they had kind of a little outbreak among the team. It was kind of a wake-up call for them in terms of getting everything together and making sure they're all on the right page and they're taking this thing seriously if they wanted to play football. Then they finally returned to the practice field in mid-August. So you're talking about 7.5 months between, their last game on New Year's Day in the Outback Bowl and their first practice. So, that's probably the longest that a lot of these players have gone without being on an actual football field and getting real reps. And then, just the last month, it's been about gearing toward the season. They've had some hiccups along the way. They had 9 guys test positive during a 1-week span, knocked 16 guys out of practice. A couple weeks ago, they had a couple more guys test positive that knocked another handful of players out of practice for quarantine protocols. But the good news is this past weekend that they didn't have any new positive cases. Gus Malzahn hopes to have everybody back when the team reconvenes for practice Tuesday. Obviously, they still have a few rounds of testing before game day, so things could change. But as of right now, it looks like Auburn's going to be, full strength heading into that season opener that we've been waiting forever for.
I know. When you put that into perspective, like 7.5 months that we've been going through this. I mean, we literally – I don't know, just putting that in perspective, 7.5 months, it just seems like we're rounding the corner to the year mark. And here we are again, finally, obviously getting to talk about college football and really having this opportunity to kick off the season. And hopefully, as you said, Auburn's contained the virus the best that they can. I mean, I covered Louisiana Tech this last weekend, and they had 40 cases all at once that essentially had to cycle guys in and out, cancel their game against Baylor. So we are seeing a lot of that throughout the college football season. A lot of shuffling, a lot of moving parts. The coaches having to go through what they're having to go through to manage all of this and manage the depth charts and everything else. It is really just hard to fathom and hard to believe. But here we are, and hopefully we can get to kick off with what will hopefully be an unscathed two deep. From what Auburn puts out early this week. And so I want to just start there offensively. Bo Nix, the starting returning quarterback. You get Chad Morris in now as the offensive coordinator, former Arkansas coach. And you wrote a great article on AL.com, just sort of how to make Bo Nix good to great. How did he get from good to great under the leadership and the guidance of Chad Morris? And, he's been known to develop quarterbacks. So what are we working with when it comes to Chad Morris, this offense, and then, of course, Bo Nix and the guys that he has surrounding him this year in 2020?
Yeah, well, when you look at the hire of Chad Morris, obviously it made sense for Gus Malzahn to bring him in, just given their relationship. They've been really close friends for close to 2 decades now, since the early 2000s, when they were both high school coaches in Arkansas and Texas, respectively. So their offenses are very similar. But then you look at Chad Morris's track record with quarterbacks, and outside of that disastrous 2-year stint as Arkansas's head coach, where just nothing went right, you look at everywhere he's been along his career, he's helped develop and groom one of each program's all-time great quarterbacks. When he was at Clemson, obviously he had Deshaun Watson for a year, and Deshaun Watson really blew up afterward, but he was still very good in his 1 year with Chad Morris. But he also had Taj Boyd, who put up some ridiculous numbers during his career at Clemson. You look at his time as an offensive coordinator at Tulsa, G.J. Kinney, who's now the offensive coordinator at Hawaii, set all sorts of program records there. When he was at Southern Methodist, Ben Hicks set program records there in individual seasons and went on to be, I believe, SMU's all-time leading passer before eventually following Chad Morris to Arkansas. And even when he was a high school coach in Texas, Garrett Gilbert, who's now with the Cleveland Browns, was a 5-star quarterback coming out of high school. They went 16-0 in his one season under Chad Morris, and he set all sorts of Texas state records that year. So you just look at what Chad Morris has been able to do over the last dozen years as a coach and play caller and quarterback coach. And, he's really got a strong track record of getting the most out of his quarterbacks. And one of the things that's just really interesting is that you look at everywhere he's been, that first year, the quarterbacks have always taken a dramatic jump in production, whether that was at Clemson or Tulsa or SMU. It's just been ridiculous numbers that they've put up. And I believe it was Taj Boyd back in January or February. He tweeted something about he expected Bo Nix to throw for like 3,500 yards and 38 touchdowns this season. Of course, that was under a normal circumstance, 12-game season. And, of course, those would both be Auburn program records if they happened. But you're talking about someone who's played in that offense and knows what Chad Morris is capable of doing with, elite talent. An increase in productivity from Bo Nix this season is not out of the question. So, really one of the first things Chad Morris did when he arrived at Auburn was he asked Bo Nix if he wanted to be good or if he wanted to be great. Bo Nix told him he wanted to be the best ever. Of course, you want that kind of confidence from your quarterback, but you need that commitment too. And so far, Chad Morris has really seen that from Bo Nix. Obviously they bring back a lot of talent at the skill positions, especially at wide receiver. They've got a versatile stable of running backs that, Chad Morris likes to use those guys in different ways. They're going to start using the tight ends more, which is something that Auburn fans have been asking for years under Gus Malzahn, but it's never really happened. But that's really one of the key differences between Gus Malzahn's offense and Chad Morris's offense. So you have the pieces around Bo Nix. Really, the only question is that offensive line and how that inexperienced line is going to shake out with just one returning starter coming back.
Yeah, obviously great points you make there, and certainly will be interesting to see that growth from Bo Nix from year 1 to year 2, and obviously so on and so forth. And anxious to see that. And let's kind of let our viewers remind them. Unfortunately, we haven't really had our eyes on the players this pandemic, this offseason. We're not allowed to go to practices. We're not allowed to really watch them. And granted, typically at practices, you're only getting to see, the first 20 minutes stretching. But, we didn't get an opportunity to see an 8A game. We didn't get an opportunity to watch into the scrimmages and to really kind of get our eyes and focused on what this season looks like. So, I think it's going to be a fun show on Saturday afternoon when we watch Auburn take on Kentucky and in the first game of the season for for the Auburn Tigers. So certainly interesting. Now, real quick, I want to go to the defense and, kind of get the lay of the land on the defensive side of the football, considering Auburn loses a lot of its key players. But let's keep in mind, Kevin Steele, obviously the defensive coordinator, has continued to take the reins on the defense. We saw this a year ago, same narrative. They lose a lot of great guys on defense in 2018 to 2019, and here we are kind of having to hit the reset button all over again. What can we expect from this Auburn defense and what they bring to the table here in the 2020 season?
Well, I think entering year 5, Kevin Steele has kind of earned the benefit of the doubt that, there's kind of that understanding that this defense is going to play to a certain standard with him in charge. And obviously you have the continuity with the coaching staff, with Travis Williams, with Rodney Garner, with Wes McGriff. Obviously they brought in Al Pogue this year to help take over that outside linebacker buck position. So they've got continuity on staff, and they're bringing back a lot too. The thing is, you're losing 2 generational talent, 2 of the best defensive players to ever come through Auburn in Derek Brown and Marlon Davidson. That's not going to be easy to replace. But Rodney Garner and Kevin Steele have done such a good job of recruiting that defensive line year in and year out with 4-star, 5-star guys that they have the talent to, not experience a significant drop-off there. They're returning guys like Big Cat Bryant and Tyrone Truesdale who are really going to, be the anchors on that line this year. It's just a matter of finding the right mix of those less experienced guys to kind of fill those voids along the line. The really good thing for Auburn is that behind that line, even though there's a couple questions there, they have what might be the best linebacker core in the SEC this year, with KJ Britt, Owen Papo, and Zakoby McClain. Obviously, Chandler Wooden opted out this season because he's expecting the birth of his first son in November. So you're probably going to have a freshman stepping into that 4th linebacker role when they like to rotate. But just that core of linebackers, especially what KJ Britt and Zakoby McClain have been able to do against the run in the last year, should really, give that defensive line kind of a cushion to work with. Then obviously in the secondary, you're replacing 4 or 5 starters. Obviously the 2 safeties, 2 cornerbacks, you're bringing back Christian Tutt as a starting nickel. But the guys that they're replacing them with have ample experience themselves. Smoke Monday and Jamie Sherwood have been playing starter-type snaps, since their freshman year. And by all accounts, they're going to should be even more productive than Jeremiah Denson and Daniel Thomas were on the back end there. Roger McCreary stepping in as that number 1 corner this year. And even though he wasn't a starter last year, he played a lot of snaps in big-time situations and really has the makings of everything that Auburn wants from a number 1 corner. The real question is just going to be who's going to fill that second corner spot. And it's kind of been a 5-man competition throughout fall camp with Nehemiah Pritchett, who's a sophomore, Marco Damio, who's a junior college transfer, Devin Barrett, who originally signed as a running back but has been a defensive back the last couple seasons, Matthew Hill, who just moved from wide receiver to cornerback this year, and Jalen Simpson, who's a redshirt freshman. So that's really probably the biggest question on this defense, is just how the rest of that secondary is going to shape out. But they've got the talent and they've got the experience. They've got the continuity on that coaching staff where they should still be a top-tier defense this year.
All right, Tom, thank you so much. Good stuff, as always. Of course, on Mondays, again, as I'll reiterate, we'll be recapping the previous game of the week, get you ready for the week ahead on these SEC Insider videos that we'll be doing each and every week. So, Tom, we appreciate the insight. Looking forward to it. I know you said you'll be at the game on Saturday, so looking forward to your insight and all your reports there from Jordan-Hare Stadium as Auburn kicks off against the Kentucky Wildcats to open the season. Woo! It is finally here. We've had September 26th circled on the calendar for quite some time now. After the SEC announced that's when the season would be kicking off. So super excited about it, Tom. Thank you so much. And I want to thank our sponsors as well. All South Appliance, proud sponsor of SEC Insider, inviting you to visit us online at myallsouth.com or at any one of our showrooms across Alabama, Tennessee, and Florida.